Hello, good afternoon. We start with breaking news. The boss of MI5 has said that the UK must defend itself resolutely against any security threats from China. Sir Ken McCallum also said that there's been a 35% increase in the number of individuals being investigated over potential plots in the last year. On China, he said the UK's relationship with Beijing was complex, but that MI5 would deal robustly with any activity threatening Britain's national security.
When it comes to China, the UK needs to defend itself resolutely against threats and seize the opportunities that demonstrably serve our nation. Our Five Eyes allies share the same pragmatic approach. The policy choices lie in exactly which lines you draw, which balances you strike. Those choices are for government, informed by expert security advice. Whatever the policy choices, just on security grounds, there are good reasons for maintaining a substantive relationship with China. When lines are crossed, being seriously engaged gives the UK a stronger position from which to push back. MI5 will keep doing what the public would expect of us, preventing, detecting and disrupting activity of national security concern.
Well, in that speech this morning, Sir Ken also spoke about the growing threat from individuals who pose a potential threat to Britain's security from within the UK.
State threats are escalating. In the last year, we've seen a 35% increase in the number of individuals we're investigating for involvement in state threat activity. That means espionage, including against our parliament, our universities, our critical infrastructure. But now, states are also consistently descending into ugly methods MI5 is more used to seeing in our terrorism casework. My teams are routinely uncovering attempts by state actors to commission surveillance, sabotage, arson or physical violence right here in the UK. We're dealing with these threats every day.
The boss of MI5 also said in that speech that his organisation was working in a new era and that the spy agency had gone through the biggest shift in its operations since 9/11.
I'd like to take stock with you today because we are in a new era. MI5's fight against terrorism remains intense. My teams are running near record volumes of investigations. But we are also having to contend with a second menace of equal or even greater scale in fast-rising state threats. In 2025, a more hostile world is forcing the biggest shifts in MI5's mission since 9/11.
Well, let's go live to central London and our security and defence editor, Deborah Haynes. And Deborah, timely as the subject of China and defence is very much in the headlines elsewhere. How significant is what he said today?
Yes, I'm standing outside the MI5 headquarters where the speech was delivered. And of course, it can't be very comfortable for a man who is usually in the shadows to have to step out for this annual event, this annual threat event, at a time when there is such scrutiny on specifically the threat posed by China to the UK, given the collapse last month of this espionage trial and questions about whether or not Sir Keir Starmer's government intervened, as the Conservatives are saying, or interfered in some way to mean that the Crown Prosecution Service had to drop the case. Of course, the two men involved have denied all wrongdoing. So against that backdrop, you had Sir Ken McCallum coming out squarely, choosing his words carefully, but clearly making sure there is no doubt that he would do, as he said, he would not back off from any threat posed to the UK by China. He also, of course, highlighted Russia and Iran. And I think it's really important to underline the severity in which the security service is seeing this escalation of state-based threats against this country, saying that they are using ugly methods more akin to what you would see terrorists using. Russia, for example, is turning to proxies to try to carry out acts. Sorry, is that the police car? Or ambulance, sorry. To carry out acts such as espionage arson, violent physical acts as well. And Iran, he highlighted Iran, saying that in the last year alone, MI5 has tracked around 20 potentially lethal plots in the UK. It's no surprise that his agency is having to deal with that while at the same time having to counter increasing threats from terrorist groups. You only have to look at what happened in Manchester to underline how important and grave a threat that is. In fact, he said that they are dealing with near record numbers of terrorism cases, and underlining the spread of those cases. It's not large groups so much anymore as individuals, including increasingly young individuals who have been radicalised, likely online. He said that 1 in 5 of more than 230 terrorism arrests last year were of children under the age of 17. And that really does give you a sense of the scale of the threat, from at the high end state-based espionage and plots to cause harm on UK soil, all the way across to lone terrorists that can cause, as we've seen, horrendous harm and fear. And that is something that this place is trying to stop every day. And as he says, he can't have a completely safe society, but he says that his people are working tirelessly to do the best they can to keep the UK safe.
And Deborah, we've also heard from him today that he has admitted being frustrated by the collapse of the Westminster spying trial.
Yes, so the speech that he gave was all pre-prepared, and then afterwards he did take some questions off camera from journalists, and he was unsurprisingly asked a lot about the collapse of that trial. And he was pretty open, I thought, in terms of his responses, admitting, of course, it must be the case when it comes to allegations of espionage that MI5 were involved in disrupting, that there is frustration when these cases don't make it to court. He did make the point, though, that MI5's purpose is to detect and disrupt plots. And in the case of the alleged Chinese espionage trial that has collapsed, he said that the allegations of wrongdoing were at least disrupted. And he also said that it's not unprecedented that you have a spying case or some kind of security threat to the UK that is stopped but doesn't, unfortunately, meet the correct threshold to go to trial. And I thought as well, he was also asked about this decision by the government yesterday night to release the evidence that was submitted by the Deputy National Security Advisor to the Crown Prosecution Service as part of this case that was being built against these two British men who've been accused of espionage on behalf of the Chinese state. And Sir Ken McCallum made the point of saying that he knows Matthew Collins, he's worked with him, and he regards him as a man of high integrity and very capable. So clearly weighing in behind a fellow security official at this time of huge scrutiny over how this happened and why.